So welcome everybody. This is In Context Design, Advancing Feature Use Incorporating Geometries from Other Parts. This is a CAD training session, the third CAD training session with xDesign, and Brad will be presenting for us today.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Today's session is going to build on the sessions we've had already. So we'll use some of the techniques that we did in the past, and we'll start to learn some of the more advanced features as part of xDesign. And this time we're going to start by making a cup in two different methods. The easiest way, the quickest way is to use an extrude that we've done in the previous workshops. And it's a little bit limited that way, and a more flexible way is using the Revolve feature that will go into it. And once we have our cup made, we'll learn how to interact with the cup in a new component. So we'll be able to reference off features, and that's really how, in a real assembly, say if you're building a robot, you start to design one part of the robot. You can fit the robot arm onto the main robot and put a manipulator or a gripper on that robot arm and start to see how they work together. So I'll give a quick introduction of what we're going to see as we go through the presentation. And then I'm going to switch to xDesign, and we'll do it live, but this kind of heads up to kind of give you an idea of what to expect as it comes down. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make an extruded cup, which is basically just an extruded cylinder. And then there's an advanced feature, part of the extrude called draft. And what draft does, it allows you to specify an angle to either draft the part in or out. So it just makes it get wider as it goes up or narrow as it goes up. It's typically used in injection molding. If you can imagine, if you had just molded the cup on the left into something, you tried to pull it out, that's like a cylinder, and pulling a cylinder out of a cylinder is going to be really tough. Where the one on the right, if you had cups stacked and you pulled a cup out, you don't have that entire area along the entire wall to pull out. So they kind of stack a little nicer, nest a little nicer. And it, for injection molding, makes the part come out of the mold a lot easier. It's a very useful feature. Once we have the cup extruded and drafted, we have to hollow it out. As you can imagine, we could use an extruded cut, but there's a better tool called the shell tool. With the shell tool, we can hollow out one or more faces of a component we just drew. The cup's a really simple example because we can just click on the top and it'll hollow out from the top down. We can say hollow out all but 1 millimeter. It'll be 1 millimeter all the way around. Or we can click on the top and bottom, it'll hollow it all the way through. If you have a component that's really complex with curved faces and lots of holes and windows in it, it does a really neat job. It's really powerful what you can do with the shell. And the next feature we're going to look at is Revolve. And it's really, really flexible feature, especially if you have something that we'll call it symmetrical around an axis. So if we were to draw a circle and a central axis and hit Revolve, it'll take that circle and it'll sweep it however many degrees we specify. And this one was 360. We can turn that into a toroid or a donut. So we can make cups and donuts. But that circle could easily be half of the profile of the cup. And you can see we can make a lot more complex cup because we can start to add little walls on the side and lips and stuff like that on it. So I'm going to fire up xDesign now, and we'll do a little practical session. I have to move my menu to be able to see it. Here we go. Okay, so we'll start up xDesign from our collaborative space. And as it's loading, when it comes up, assuming you've already had a collaborative space opened, a little menu will come up on the bottom here. We can select which collaborative space you want to create your component in. And that's kind of a save drive where it will happen, because in the cloud, it's not quite apparent where that is. So the first thing I'll do is I'll close this navigation window so we get a full screen here. And we will make a new component. And I've got a couple collaborative spaces here. Let's make it in the Elegoo workshop, and we'll call this extruded cup. So we hit OK. It's going to fire that up. And the one thing I recommend when you do something like this is to save your space right away. And that just lets you know if you have permission to that collaborative space. If you're working a shared space that you don't have permission to, you won't be able to save, and your work will be kind of lost at the end. So we had talked about doing the extruded cup first. So as we're all probably familiar, it's going to start with a sketch. And well, we want the sketch to sit on the XY plane. So we're going to click that first. And now to lock it down somewhere, we'll move our cursor around. You can see when we get to the origin, we can make the circle lock to the origin, which is always good. And again, I like the N key. We can pan and rotate around, but hit the N key, we'll go normal to that plane. So we're looking straight down, makes it a little bit easier. So let's make this cup, I don't know, make it 40 millimeters at the bottom. Sounds good. And now, as we learned before, the very first thing we do, go into our feature context here. Our feature bar changes to all those options, the feature context now. We can pick extrude. Because our sketch was selected, it knows which sketch we want to extrude. I think our cup needs to be a little bit taller, so let's go to, I don't know, 60 millimeters. Does that look about right? Looks like a mighty fine height for a cup for me. But as we mentioned, it's just straight. So one of the things we want to do is click on the advanced options down here. You see this option here, draft. So we'll say we want to draft it in one direction. And it's defaulting right now to 5 degrees, which looks pretty decent, but the cup would be upside down. So there's a little set of arrows here. With most features, there'll be a set of arrows to control which direction you want to go in. So we click that arrow and it extruded the opposite direction. I think maybe you want a little more slopey, so let's go to 7 degrees maybe. And it's gonna be a little deceiving too, because there is perspective. So depending, when we were extruding the one direction, it looked a little more radical than the other because of the perspective. So once we hit OK, we can see we now have this, what would it be, truncated cone, I guess would be the actual shape. So if we want, we could click on this surface, draw a circle, extrude it down. We could do all the math in our head to say, okay, we knew it was like 30 millimeters in the bottom. Let's figure out how big it is in the top or offset it from the top. It's going to be a little tricky. So instead, we still have our features tab activated. So we look down at this one here. This one is called shell. Click on that. It comes up. We'll just stick with one way for now. And we think about if we want to drink from the top of the cup. So if we click on the top, it's actually hollowed out the cup automatically for us, except not the bottom. And right now it's saying the thickness is 1 millimeter. That's pretty thick for a cup wall. Let's go to 0.5 millimeters. And we now have a cup. It's kind of hard to see right now because it is gray and the screen is gray. So one of the things we can do, if you see this little shape here, looks like a couple of axes intersecting each other. If we right click, this is called our OGS, or order geometric set. There's a little color wheel here. So let's click on the color wheel, and all our features are going to exist under this OGS for the part we're working on. Right now, current color. You know, I'd want to be team red or team blue. Let's go team red. You need to say and drag this. Let's make it a little, oh, that's kind of a nice color red right there. So apply and continue. And now click OK. Now you can see we've got a red cup, and it's really apparent that there's a bottom in it where it's not the same color. So let's hit save. And as we go a little bit deeper into xDesign, we can do a lot more with our design manager. But for now, we'll try and keep it a little bit simple. And instead of using our design manager to create a new component, we're going to go here. We'll click on the little up arrow and say new. And now we'll try making a revolved cup. Oops, caps lock here. And it's still in the Elegoo workshops collaborative space. Okay, and now, as you saw in the quick little slide presentation at the start, instead of doing it from the starting at the base, we're going to draw the side profile, half the side profile. So if we want the cup to be in the same direction, it's probably going to be on this plane, which is the ZY plane. So we're going to maybe pick sketch first. We'll do it with lines. And first, you can see here, it's asking us for a plane, as it always does. So we'll click this plane, and I'll hit N for normal. What we can do is we'll start from the bottom. And you can see I went right to the origin. And it's letting us know the H is some constraint it's automatically doing. So let's draw the cup out. Let's draw a wall for a cup, horizontal line up, and a lip for a cup. I'm going to make it purposely a little bit on a different angle. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, so now I'm gonna hit escape, and that's kind of the shape of the cup I want, but not quite perfect yet. So we can start dimensioning that a little bit, but we also need to add a central axis too. So I'm going to click on another line. I'll start at the origin. I'll draw up, escape to get out of the stop bit. If I hover over, it's going to highlight. I'll right click. And if you remember from one of the previous workshops, we had this ability to toggle between a regular line and a construction line. And when it's dotted like that, it's a construction line. So that construction line is not going to be used really as part of the sketch. It's only used to help us do our drawing. So after we've got a rough outline made, and this is kind of part of the top-down design aspect that we'll talk about a little bit. We didn't draw it perfect. We didn't care everything yet, but we'll start to build on it now. So I'm going to dimension from the bottom point of the cup to the construction line. You see down here, it's 53 millimeters. And that's kind of the radius of it. Say if you want to work diameter, if you move over to the far side, it kind of knows right now that we're probably going to be doing a revolve. So if you hover on one side, you get the radius. Hover on the other side, you get the diameter. So we can say, well, last time we did diameter of 40. Let's make this one a little different. We'll make this one 45. So now it knows the diameter is 45. We can say from here to here, we want this to be, let's make this one 50. The little lip on the cup, let's make it like really small, maybe 2 millimeters wide. And from here to here, this top lip, maybe about 6 millimeters. I think it should be a bit taller. Okay, so now the cup's starting to be a little more defined. My cursor has got the dimensioning bar on it. So you can see it knew I wanted to keep repeating those dimensions, so it kept it highlighted. So when done, I hit escape, dimensioning bar goes off. And as expected, there's a lot of things we're not defined yet, so we can still move stuff around. So to help us make it a little bit easier on ourselves, we know that this wall, the cup, is going to be parallel with each other. So I'll click on this line. I hold down Control. Whoops. I clicked on the center point, not the line. So click on the line. Click on the line. There we go. Hold down Control and click on this line. I've got two selected now. As soon as I let go of Control, the context menu is going to come up. And this is where we can put different constraints in. So you can see we got vertical. We probably don't want that. We don't really want collinear because it would be joined. Equals. Parallel is a really good one. So watch what happens when we click parallel. You can see this line shot up to be parallel with this. So our cup's becoming more defined. Now if I drag this line, it's not really moving a lot of axes except in and out. So you can see we lock this in. We can lock an angle in here if we want, or we can add a second dimension. So click on the dimension tool. Say if I want, let's go to the inside of the cup. Inside a cup to the center line, 29 millimeters for the radius, or if we want the diameter, you put it over here. Let's go straight out 60. Okay, now the sketch is all defined now. So if I grab any of these points, if I want to just test it to make sure, I can't move any of the points because we've now fully defined the sketch. The drawing knows everything about it. Someone come in and look, they know the exact dimensions of all our sketch. So that's good. But in order for a feature to work, we need a closed geometry. So the sketch has got to be closed where this is just a line. So we can go back and redraw all these lines to completely close this shape, or there's an easier way. So if we look here, this is called, it's called sketch offset. So we'll click on that, a new dialog comes up, select entities to offset. So I'll pick one of these lines. And you saw around it, a yellow line appeared everywhere around everything we drew, and it's offsetting it by 2 millimeters. The reason it's doing that, the select chain is checked. So that means we click on that one line, it finds a chain of all the connected lines. When I was thinking of this cup in my head, I was kind of thinking that this would be the outside dimensions. So what we can do, we grab this arrow, reverse it to the other side, and click it to whatever dimension we want. I can't click down to the dimension I want, so I'll drag it somewhere in the middle, get it close, and then I'm going to type in the dialog box here, 1, make the cup. We'll make this cup a little bit thicker. I saw 1 millimeter wide. Okay, so I hit OK, which did the same thing as clicking the check mark there, but it's still not fully closed because you can see up at the top here, we've got an open face. So this is what you'll do a lot in sketching. You'll start to draw some features. You can come back with arcs or lines or whatever. We put an arc on there so we have nice rounded, but we'll keep it simple for now. We'll do a line. So it's highlighted. I know I'm at that endpoint. It's highlighted. I know I'm at that endpoint. I'm going to zoom out. Come back in. My line tool is still selected. So click there. Now watch what happens when I click this final click. The line just turned blue. Or sorry, the inside of this just turned blue. And blue means we've got a fully defined sketch. So we're going to press escape to get out of the line tool. So I press escape. You'll notice that highlighted rectangle will go away. Now I'm just using select. And again, I can drag any of these points. They're not going to move. So I can click OK and close the sketch. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go directly to features. And you'll see one where we've got a center line and something revolving around it. That's Revolve feature. So I'll click that, let it think for a bit. Now the Revolve feature, there's two things we have to define. One is a sketch profile, and that's a sketch we just did. It knows it's going to select sketch one. But the second is the revolve axis. So we can revolve it around this line, which will make a pretty strange looking cup. But we define this construction line here. So if we highlight in this menu, click the construction line, you see suddenly we have this cup. Kind of looks more like a flower pot right now, but that's good. So hit OK. Yeah, that's not a bad looking cup. So we can go to change it a little bit now. Now that it's drawn, we can go back into Sketch. We can either double click Sketch and open it back up. You see how easy it is now. If I say I wanted the bottom to be a little narrower, you go to like 35 millimeters. I want it to be a little taller. We'll go to 60 millimeters. Now hit OK. And the cup has just kind of resized itself automatically. You can kind of go in and start playing around with sketches like that as much as you want to try and get the shape exactly how you need. And again, with top-down design, we often go in and we'll start throwing something down and going back in and just kind of tweaking it and playing with it until we get it where we like it. Okay, I can move this bar here to find out how to present. So that was kind of how we did a cup. But now if we want to use that cup somehow, we can make an assembly. Now, traditionally CAD packages are assembly, they've got these very different, very distinct constructs where you don't really sketch an assembly, you just pull other components in and you mate them together. So you pull like 5 or 6 parts that you drew together. Say if you had a telescopic arm, you'd pull each of those telescopic sections in, you'd mate them together to say, okay, this section can slide within this section can slide within here, and the end effector on the end can rotate with the respect to the bolt hole in it. And that's kind of how assemblies typically work. The newer CAD packages and cloud-based packages, it's getting kind of blurry. There's not really so much of a construct for assembly, but for now, we'll kind of treat it like there is to sort of make a little more sense if you're going back and forth between SolidWorks. But the deeper we go into top-down design, the more we'll start to see how we can kind of stretch that line of what an assembly is. Okay, so when we have an assembly, we pull an assembly, there's a few things that we'll notice that happen in our design manager. We're going to create a new component called a cup tool because we're going to make a tool to work with a cup. And you can see it up here. Here's a cup tool, and this little block with a colored blue block, that's kind of like an assembly. And it kind of blows out into all these other parts. So we're creating a new cup tool, and we're going to start drawing in another one of these things, which is called our OGS, our ordered geometric set. But what we also did is we inserted an existing component down here, which is the revolved cup that we just drew. So we can insert that into our assembly. As you can see, it's part of cup tool, but it's not part of this OGS. So we can work and draw some new features and sketches outside of this. And you can kind of choose that. You can kind of link this cup to the original cup to say that if someone goes in and changes that cup, do I want my cup to change or not? So you've got the flexibility of saying whether you want those linked or not. But as you know, with sketches, we're kind of limited to a plane. So you can see in this particular one, that tool for the cup is right on the very, very bottom of the cup. I don't know, maybe you don't want to scrape your tool along the ground. You might want to have it offset from the ground. So if we want to do that, we'll have to put a new plane in. We can sketch on that plane and just adjust the location. So I think, yeah, so let's go out of this. We'll go back into the xDesign, and we'll start to play around a little bit now with an in-context assembly. So again, there's a way to get it to it from the design manager. We'll save the cup. But to keep it a little simple for right now without going into too much of the interface, we'll stick to it from the little bit more intuitive menu space. So let's call this the cup tool, I think is what we're going to call it. We'll hit OK. Okay, so now over on the design manager, you can see that we're now working the cup tool space. But before we start, if we want to see how we can interact with that cup, let's actually insert it. So from the assembly menu, there's something here with these little arrows, insert new component, and a component and a part, we'll kind of use them interchangeably for now, or insert an existing component. So if we're going to draw something from scratch, we do it from here. If we're going to insert something we've already drawn, we'll do it from here. So we click on that, it's going to think for a little bit. And there's other ways we could do it from the search bar. I don't have a whole lot of stuff. Well, I guess I have 52 things in here. Revolved. What do I want? Okay. Revolved cup. That's called one revolved cup. I don't think it's one we drew right now, but still. Whoops. Okay. Here's something that I do a lot, so it's probably good to point out. If you notice, it opened up with 3D Play because I clicked on the text. So if you click on the text up here, it opens up with 3D Play. But what you want to do is click on the image and then say, OK. That will insert the cup. So if we give it a sec, you can see we now have a revolved cup that's inside the cup tool. But in the cup tool, we don't have an OGS yet, so we can't do anything. We can't draw yet. So the very first time we start acting on the cup tool, we'll get an OGS so we can start to sketch on it. So let's make a sketch plane first, because we don't want to manipulate this cup right from the very, very bottom. If there's something on the bottom, that would catch. So in the features tab, sorry, I have to remember where it is in each of these different packages I use. There's one called a plane. So you can see it's flat with a line through it. So we can make a reference plane. There's a whole bunch of different ways to make planes. You can like pick off different faces. You can pick off different points. And it's pretty smart about it. But for this one, it's going to be pretty simple. If we pick our XY plane and click on that, it's going to assume we want an offset plane here. So we look a little bit sideways, 10 millimeters. Let's go a little more. Let's go 20 millimeters. So that's like somewhere halfway up the cup. So say if we want to manipulate this cup halfway up, we can make a plane 20 millimeters up. We'll hit OK. If you notice on your design manager, there's now a new OGS. We've got a plane in it, and we can sketch on planes. So let's go to sketch, and let's make a circle. And we look up on the top, it's asking for something, select a plane to sketch. So in the past, we've always been selecting some of the default planes, but we've just created this shiny new plane. We could click on it here or click on it here. It's going to do the same action. And now this little grid system has appeared on halfway up the cup where we did that plane. So maybe in this example, again, we'll click on the origin. Nope, we lost our circle. So I'm going to click on the circle. We'll click on the origin and draw a circle of an arbitrary size. But often we can use some of these other features. See if I move over the cup, we can make the circle equal to this just by clicking the two and saying make them equal. But this is way up here. We can make it equal to this. That's way down there. So the circle would be either too small or too big. So going back to your kind of geometric math, tangent's always something nice. So if we instead click on the circle, and we'll go over here somewhere, and see how it's kind of clicking on this whole face of the cup? Hold down Control and click on that face of the cup, let go. There's some new options up here that we've not really seen a whole lot before. And this one here is the tangent. So you can see we've got a line and a circle. If we click that, this circle has now become tangent to the cup at this particular slice, at this particular profile. So this is something we can start to work with now. So we don't probably want our tool to be the exact same size of the cup. So we'll hit escape so we aren't selecting anything. I'm going to right click on this and turn it to a construction line. So now we've got this construction line we can start to do stuff with. And as we saw when we did the extrude, there's a really useful tool called offset sketch. So we click on that. We'll click on our construction line. How much border do we want around this? I don't know, maybe let's say 10 millimeters. Hit tab, you can see it's going in the right direction. It's going away from it. So that means the inside of our tool, I'm thinking we'll make it 10 millimeters bigger than the cup. Maybe not the perfect driver. So hit OK. We want a little bit of tolerance. But that'll be the inside of our cup that I'm thinking. So let's do another offset. I don't know, do we want a big, thick gripper? Sure. Let's make it 12 millimeters. Let's make it 11 this time. We'll hit OK. So now we've got a couple concentric circles around here, but they're going all the way around the cup. And it's up to you. You could go down instead. You could draw like this 3-point arc right along the halfway point to kind of do what we're going to do here. But instead, I think what I'd like to do is say we're going to start closing this cup off. We need it to be from here. Oh, hit N again for normal. Halfway around the cup there, I'm going to hit escape. I'll go back and I'll draw from here to here. Halfway around the cup. Oh, so see, this guy didn't turn blue, or he didn't turn black. So what I can do is find out why not. And I can move it because we didn't have it offset to the center anywhere. So if that happens, what we can do is say, okay, we want this point and the one I'm packaging used to, you don't have to hold down Control. So select the origin and this line, and we can say we want those to be horizontal with respect to each other. There, now it's turned black and it's horizontal. But we've got a full circle. We only want a semicircle. So I'm going to go to the scissors tool. I'll cut that line. I cut the whole half off. I'll cut this line and cut that off. And now, if you remember, the blue color means you've got an enclosed solid. So you see the scissors right by my tool there. I'm going to press escape to get out of scissor mode. We've got something that's starting to look like a tool, but it's only a sketch. So in order to turn it to a feature, let's hit features. Let's extrude it. How thick do we want it to be? That 60 is too big. Let's go 10 millimeters again. Hit OK. Okay. So now you can see what we did. We've made this manipulator kind of based off the diameter of the cup. And you can see it in our OGS here. In our design manager, we've got a plane, an extrude, and a sketch. Let's go back, edit the sketch. And we'll make a little handle. You can see an example, we got a handle on it. So to make a handle, the way I'd probably do it is I'd start with a construction line again. We'll get that vertical relation. We'll right click, toggle it into construction line. And what we're going to do this time is we're not going to break the sketch apart. So I'm going to go across, vertical. I'm going to make it purposely, whoops. We lost our, I'll make it purposely not perfect because sometimes you miss those built-in constraints. So what we can do, we'll left click that and say we want to make that horizontal. Whoops. If we look at our planes, we are rotated a little bit. You kind of get used to how to kind of jiggle your mouse around. Oh, that's why. So our handle's on the top. So what I'm going to do instead, I'll click that and say I want to make that vertical, not horizontal. That looks a little better. And I want to click, click, click. I think you remember from the first one, there's another cool constraint called symmetric. So those are symmetric. So now we can grab this. We can start to pull it around. You can see it kind of changes size and shape. We can get it approximately the way we like it right now. I kind of like it there. But now it's blue. We have to fully define it. So if we make that, say, make a nice round 40. And the width, we'll make that 20. Okay. It's not blue. It's not closed, but we kind of know it is because it's joined to this sketch. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit OK anyways. And the extrude feature kind of knew that we probably want both those. But let's say we didn't. We can edit back into this extrude feature. And we'll get a list here and it says, yeah, it picked all sketch 1 for you. We might not want all of sketch 1. So if we turn it away, we can say we only want this part or we only want this part. I don't know. So let's click on the original tool. We'll hit OK. We're back just to that. Why do we want to do that, you ask? Well, let's add a new feature. We'll do an extrude again. And we want to extrude this other part that was here a second ago a little less high. So it'll be kind of a two-stepped part, which is sometimes want to do, but we can't see it anymore. So we go back to our feature tree. We'll right click, and there's a little eyeball there. The eyeball is show. So even though it thinks we've kind of stopped using that sketch, we can say, no, we're not done with that sketch yet. So we turn the show and we can toggle it on or off. And it's kind of useful to kind of keep your workspace tidy and not have sketches showing you don't need. But in this case, we want to show it. And this time we'll click here. And by default, it did the last dimension, which was 10 millimeters. Let's go to 8. We hit OK. Now we've got, you can see a sketch with two different diameters, or two different heights, which is kind of neat. I think I'm a better driver, so what I'm going to say is I want to make this grip a little tighter. So I go in this sketch, this 10 millimeter offset. Hey, call me crazy. I'm going down to 5, and I'm going to hit OK. So now, from the sketch plane around to the cup is 5 millimeters. Well, what happens if we want to move this plane back down? Again, just as you expect, we go to our Design Manager feature tree. We double click the plane. I double clicked it, it didn't come up. So sometimes you can do this if you like as well. Edit feature. I could have double clicked it again. That would have been fine. And it's 20 millimeters. Let's go down to 7 millimeters. So that plane dropped down to 7 millimeters. The cup's quite a bit smaller down here. Let's see what happened. If you look, that 5 millimeter space was maintained because we look at our sketch, we know that we made this construction circle tangent to the cup edge. So that's kind of an example of how to use cup geometry or geometry from one feature into another. And from here, you can just start to have fun now, right? We still have the sketch turned on, and I see this construction line here. So let's make a new sketch. So we're on sketch. Let's make a circle. We want to make a mounting hole. Oops. I didn't want to do that, so I'm going to close out. We want to make a circle, and I'm going to click this plane because up here it's got our plane thing. It's asking for a plane. First, I'm going to start by clicking here. Okay, so now we're sketching on the plane of this, and I can't pick up this construction line right now with my center line, which is okay. Often what you have to do instead, you sketch it, I'll hit escape, I'll pick the center of this, I'll press Control and the construction line, I let go, and now it brings up the option for coincident. So I can say, I want that center of the circle to coincide with that construction line from a different sketch on the plane of this different part. Very cool. It's still blue. It's not fully dimensioned. So I'm gonna hit N so we can start to see it. There we go. Let's make it a 6mm hole. And let's make it, I'm using 10mm a lot, so let's make it 10mm from the end. Okay, so I can hit yes to close a sketch, or I can go immediately into my features and go into the extrude feature again, which I wasn't kidding when we said we use the extrude feature a lot. But now you can see there's some more options are available up here. So instead of adding to it, we could, if we want to make this little kind of rivet come out of it, we could, but let's cut a mounting hole out of it. So I hit cut. And it's going the wrong way. So let's try this. There we go. We just couldn't see it. So we hit OK. That means we're going to cut that hole out. So now we have a hole in it. And there's some other useful features that we use too. There's something called fillet. We click the fillet. What a fillet does, it kind of rounds off the edges. A lot of times in machining, you don't like to have these really sharp lines. So we can click on an edge we've already done. Let's click on two edges. You can see how the yellow is kind of showing. It's going to curve that a little bit. Let's go big. Let's go to like an 8mm fillet. It's going to curve the edges off like that. So now this is starting to look a little more like a cup manipulator. Another useful feature is really closely related to a fillet, so much so that it's under the same dialog. We click the little up arrow here. We're going to change the fillet, which is a nice curved edge, to a chamfer, which is going to be a flat edge. I'll click this, and this is screaming at me over here. You can see an error because our distance is too big. Let's go to 3mm. And we're trying to fill it right off the edge of this, which it didn't really like. Or sorry, we're trying to chamfer off the edge. Let's go to 4mm. I want it to be a little about halfway through, so let's go to 5mm. Whoops, I almost pressed an angle there. So what it's saying now is we want to go take 5mm off at a 45-degree angle. We can change the angle if we want. We can make it not symmetric, but let's stick with that. And there's a little lead in to get our cup. So I think we're coming up on 50 minutes here, so I think that's probably a good place to break. We can pause now and start asking questions. We can go back to some stuff we learned, like here's the design features. We can take the current color. We can make this green. Again, you can drag the little slider around to kind of tune the color however you want. Apply and continue. Hit OK. Because this is a part, it's a little harder to be able to get into it. So we have to do, you're probably pretty familiar with the OGS here. So we blow this dialog down. You can see this is the OGS from the original design cup now. So I can get this OGS. I can select the color wheel, and we can make that red. Make it dark red. Apply and continue. Yeah, so we can start to manipulate cups that are in our drawing. And I think that's a good place to break right now. What we can learn coming up in the next session is how to start assembling things. You can see we've got this nice hole here right now. Well, we could take another component. We could say we want to have this component bolt to this component, or maybe this is going to pivot. We could rotate it around here. And we'll start to learn into how assemblies work in the next session. So I think from there, for the challenge, if you weren't following along, go ahead and try and make a Revolve cup. If you look at the game manual, there'll be an approximate value. There'll be the values for some of the dimensions, not all of them, but that's okay because that's a lot of times what we do with CAD. we'll take the dimensions we have, we'll make our sketch match those. The dimensions we don't have, we kind of look at it and try to guess what they would be and adjust it until we like how it looks. When you get your actual cup, you go back and change it to make it match exactly after you measure it. Then create a new component like we just did, add your cup to it, and do your offset planes. You can move the sketch tool up and down and start to make some tool manipulators. Maybe don't make it round, make a wedge one, make a plow, and have some fun with it right there. So with that, we'll pause for questions. Does anyone have any questions for what we just went through?
So you have a couple of choices. You can either unmute yourself, ask your question, or you can type it in the chat.
Was anyone following along? Did anyone manage to get some of the stuff made? Were we going at a good speed, a little fast, a little slow? We covered a lot more in this one than we have in the past, because I think you've got that foundation now to be able to pick up on the usage of it. I think it's a little hard when you first start. It's a little hard to get the concepts of what a sketch is, what a feature is. But now that you've got those concepts, I think we can start throwing them at you a lot quicker and start to learn at a lot faster pace. If you don't get it the first time, you can always go back and watch the video again and just play around with it.
Okay, so I don't see any questions or hear any questions. So, oh, here we go. Connor has a question. What are the main differences between SolidWorks and xDesign? Oh, that's such an awesome question, Connor. Love it. Brad?
Yeah, so that's a really good one. I guess the main difference I would say is xDesign is cloud-based, which means you're not saving anything local on your computer. It also means you're not installing anything on your computer. You're running it out of a web browser. So that was just running out of Google Chrome, everything you saw right there, which means it'll run on a Chromebook. And I know some of the jokes is it'll run on a smart fridge. If you have a smart fridge, you can run cloud-based CAD. As opposed to SolidWorks, where we need these big workhorse of a computer, we need a huge graphics card, we need lots of memory. For xDesign, you don't install anything on your PC, you're just running it in a browser. So it kind of opens up a lot of the lower end computers to start doing some really, really powerful CAD. Most of the work is done up on the host PC, up in the cloud somewhere. And if you've got a reasonable graphics card, it's just kind of sending metadata down to you. So if you've got a reasonable graphics card, you can pull in like super complex assemblies and be doing really complex work right in the web browser. It's not quite as powerful as SolidWorks when you start to get into some of the FEA and like surfacing, and so SolidWorks is quite a bit more powerful. It's got a lot more functionality, but xDesign for if you're just doing straight CAD and straight assemblies and just building robots, it's actually pretty powerful, and it'll get you a long way. But then we step back from the xDesign into 3D experience, and xDesign is part of 3D experience. And I think the point of 3D experience, a lot of the features you do have to install on your computer, but now that will kind of seamlessly integrate xDesign right into SolidWorks and the 3D experience right into SolidWorks. So that will actually make SolidWorks even more powerful than SolidWorks is, because now you get a lot of the surfacing tools. There's a lot of product lifecycle management tools in it. I can make a drawing, I can put it out for approval. Coworkers will have the ability to approve the design. They can mark it up in Sketch and say, I don't know about this feature here. And you can kind of collaborate that way. And as far as collaboration goes, natively in xDesign, you've got collaborative spaces. So that space I was working in right now, what I could do is I could share that with people. I can share that with an entire team or a group of people. We can all be working on the same part together, the same assembly together. Or some people can have read-only access. So like some people can kind of see what you're doing if you're trying to let them access it but not change it on you. So that's kind of xDesign in a nutshell. It's a somewhat pared down version of SolidWorks, but still a really, really powerful design tool that you can run right on a web browser. And I think one of the next things we'll do as part of the Elegoo challenges, we'll import the components for the Elegoo car, like the motors and the base plates, and then we can go into the assembly mode and start assembling those together. The nice part about that, because it'll be an assembly, we can actually unassemble it too. We can break the assembly links and pull parts around, make spacers, and start to reconfigure the robot for how we like it based on the components.
Okay, thanks, Brad. I'm just going to launch a poll if everybody wouldn't mind answering the poll. It's just the question is, did you enjoy this workshop? The other thing I have done is in the chat, I've added our Google form, and this will provide us with a more detailed feedback just to let us know kind of, how it went for you today. So I've only got one person voted. Oh, 2 people have voted so far. So we'll just give it, oh, perfect. We have our people voting, which is perfect. So I'm going to end our poll now. I think what I'm going to do now, unless anybody has any questions, is I'm going to end the live stream up on YouTube, and then we can stay for a few more minutes and discuss. So thank you everybody for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.